How have we got? Okay, we've got a good few people in now, so I think we'll get started. I think start to introduce the session as more people keep rolling in. So yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Nolan from the CE Hub. I'm pleased to welcome you to our first lunchtime webinar of the year. So Happy New Year, welcome to 2024. It's a good way to be kicking off the year, I think, with a fascinating group of speakers, as well as a very interesting topic, I think, in relation to circular economy research, and that is on interdisciplinarity. If I go to the next slide, which I should be able to do. Imogen, are you able to advance the slides? Thank you. So we've just got some housekeeping before I introduce the speakers and introduce some sort of preparatory remarks, I suppose, for the talk. So the webinar is being recorded and will be made available via the CE Hub website and hosted on the YouTube channel. If you do not wish to be recorded in the conversation, then please keep your cameras off. But if you do want to ask a question, of course, just pop it in the chat and I'll happily read that out. Please keep your microphones on mute while the speakers are presenting, as is, all too familiar now, I suppose. And add any questions that you wish in the Q&A box, and we'll pick them up after the session. So we're very privileged to be joined by Anushka Dave and Julian Kircher today, who I'll introduce more properly just before they speak. But before we get onto that, I'm just going to sort of provide a bit of context for the webinar discussion via. We've got some microphones on, by introducing the NICER program, which is the the wider program that the Circular Economy Hub sits in. So Imogen, if we could go on to my slide, that'd be great. Thank you. Thanks. So I'm just going to talk over this one slide and introduce this kind of idea of interdisciplinarity, because it's one of those concepts, I think, that people intuitively understand or have a bit of an impression of what it means to them, but it can be challenging to express, I think, or articulate what it is, where it happens, or even how to perform it in practice. I work in the business school, the management department at the University of Exeter, and there are increasing calls from the field that I work in, sort of around organisation and management studies, for combined interdisciplinary collaboration, and it's been the same for many years, especially wrapped up in the context of societal grand challenges. So the idea is that interdisciplinary solutions are needed to tackle the big challenges that are facing society today. Some academics have even argued that the way knowledge is produced has shifted over the past century from discipline-specific practices. We can think of the picture of the lone scientist in a lab, to temporary, more task force style teams, which is sort of assembling expertise from all across academia, but also the private landscape, as well as public institutions, governments, NGOs, interested citizen groups, and so on. So this idea of interdisciplinarity or interdisciplinary collaboration is an important part of what a lot of us are doing, and a lot of people on the call in this arena as well. And indeed, it's an important area of research into a variety of the issues that we're facing. So I just want to talk about the graphic that's on the being shared now, because for those of you who are not familiar with the NICER program, interdisciplinary is in the name. So it's the National Interdisciplinary Circular Economy Research Program. And that is part of, or the CE Hub that runs these webinar series that hopefully some of you are regular attendees of, is part of this broader network. And as you can see, we're called interdisciplinary, and the structure of the program is around 5 research centres focusing on specific material flows, as depicted on screen: textiles, metals, construction minerals, technology metals, and chemicals. The CE Hub sort of doing some broader sector agnostic, material agnostic work, things like business models, policy, data, road mapping, KPIs, and things like that. So we're working across, various disciplines, not just within, the program as a whole, but within the centre, catalysed, as I say, not around academic departments, but just different problems and different, different problem areas through the different materials, to sort of increase the adoption and implementation and capability of circular economy within a UK context. It's not only about academic researchers working together, which often feels like the case if you engage with academic research on interdisciplinarity, on what researchers are doing. But as you can see, we've got lots of industrial partners that run throughout the project. Some of them are in businesses and others are in policy. Around the outside of the graphic there, we've got academic industry policy community network, specific with support and direct input from DEFRA and BASE. So, it spans much more than academics working together and with each other to sort of encompass this broader ecosystem of actors, which is really important. And I think we'll hear a lot about more about that, and it's certainly represented in the types of people that we have on the call. This sort of big cross section of people that want to work together and want to know how to work together better, and in what ways it could be achieved most sort of fruitfully, I suppose. So that's the kind of context for this session, for the webinar, and we're going to have 2 talks primarily led by a Q&A session for about half an hour. So we have Anushka Dave, who I'm going to hand to first, because she's going to provide a sort of more of an overview of interdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary collaboration more generally, and then we'll move on to Julian's talk, who's going to talk about a recent paper and some broader issues around the development of circular economy as a research field. So with that, I'll introduce Anushka. So Anushka Dave is a principal consultant at Technopolis with expertise in research and innovation policy related to the health and life sciences, higher education and interdisciplinary research. She has led key reviews on interdisciplinary research in the UK and Norway, and is currently a part-time research fellow at the University of Sussex, studying the impact of interdisciplinary research. Anushka has a PhD in molecular biology from the University of East Anglia and a master's in science and technology policy from the University of Sussex. And today, as I say, Anushka is going to provide us with this overview and some broader context. So Anushka, over to you for around 10 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, and thanks a lot for inviting me to speak about some of the work that I've done at Technopolis around understanding how interdisciplinary research is being done in UK higher education institutions. So it's basically several reports, including a landscape review of interdisciplinary research that we did several years ago, as well as case studies. Like we did case studies of 10 different types of interdisciplinary research collaborations, different types of ways of organizing interdisciplinary research. And most recently, we've done a study on ref outputs and looking at how interdisciplinary research outputs fare in the ref exercise. So basically, in today's talk, I'll cover start from the interdisciplinary research and what it means and how it's defined, what drives interdisciplinary research, and what can facilitate or act as a barrier to interdisciplinary research, different ways in which interdisciplinary research can be organized, and this will end with some kind of what works, take-home messages for you and considerations that you could incorporate when trying to think about doing interdisciplinary research and supporting interdisciplinary research more widely in a higher education institution environment. So I'm trying to see if I can. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So yes, so you must have come across all terminologies like multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and interdisciplinary, and these are used interchangeably to indicate ways in which different disciplines are coming together in a research project or in a research program. So this is, and actually these words should not be used interchangeably, with multidisciplinarity meaning a project where disciplines come together, but they remain within the boundaries of those disciplines, while transdisciplinary is on the opposite spectrum, where the disciplines are interacting so closely along with kind of wider societal stakeholders in a way that transcends traditional disciplinary boundaries, and interdisciplinarity somewhere in the middle. So the next slide, yeah. But what does that all mean in practice? It basically creates different interpretations and inconsistencies, ultimately resulting in interdisciplinary research being used as an umbrella term for any kind of research which involves more than one discipline. What funders do to make things clearer is they will often define what they mean by interdisciplinarity in the context of a program or in the context of their research funding organization. For example, UKRI will say that research which draws together insights and approaches from one or more research disciplines is interdisciplinary research. So this is a kind of a very wide term. Also, nonetheless, within projects, researchers and institutions will have their own interpretation of what interdisciplinary research means. We found evidence for this in the study where we were looking at REF outputs. And if you're familiar with how REF works, and in REF 2021, interdisciplinary research outputs were supposed to be flagged, and we found that these flags were applied inconsistently. So things that, outputs that weren't interdisciplinary were sometimes tagged as interdisciplinary and vice versa. So despite these inconsistencies, we find that interdisciplinary research is being done mostly for one of two reasons. One is either to advance knowledge and kind of create new breakthroughs and transformational novel ways of thinking and doing research, or addressing grand challenges, societal challenges, and complex problems. In terms of facilitating factors and barriers, these are pretty much ones that would kind of impinge on whether a collaboration is good or bad. So, of course, any factors that will help collaborate will also help interdisciplinary collaborations, which includes kind of personal qualities such as kind of curiosity, openness, having institutional support and messaging where interdisciplinary research is valued, and there are support measures like funding or infrastructure, networking opportunities, etc., as well as kind of good leaders and champions for interdisciplinary research. So this could be kind of leadership in an institutional setting, or indeed leadership at the research project level as well. Again, as I mentioned already, barriers are often collaboration-related barriers, finding partners, establishing the kind of ways of working and priorities, setting up shared priorities and communicating. well with partners that are coming from different disciplines. The norms and cultures associated with different disciplines can also act as a barrier. And then there are other kind of career-based or publishing-based barriers, which are often associated with kind of peer reviews, where interdisciplinary research might be reviewed by people who are more monodisciplinary and don't have the understanding of what might happen in an interdisciplinary setting, what's different. Okay. Yeah, so with all this in mind, we've also, how do you best get different disciplines to work together? So different institutions and different interdisciplinary settings have come up with different ways to organize interdisciplinary research, ranging from having all the people from different disciplines being co-located in one place. So that could be an interdisciplinary department, an interdisciplinary center, or similar. Interdisciplinary research can also work kind of with virtual collaborations where researchers are sitting across either different departments, different universities, even different countries, but they are able to collaborate virtually through kind of online settings, etc., and build those collaborations and do the interdisciplinary research. The other ways of doing this is also through either top-down or bottom-up approaches. So, for example, universities may set up kind of themes across which they expect different disciplines to collaborate or set up interdisciplinary centers. You might have programs that are set up by funders that are asking for this. Or on the opposite spectrum, you have investigators coming up with ideas, research ideas, which involve more than one discipline, and they create their own interdisciplinary research collaboration setting and organizational structure to do interdisciplinary research. There are other models that I can go to, but maybe in the interest of time, I'll move on to the next slide. But so you can actually use some of these interventions and structures either individually or in parallel. So you could have both co-location and virtual networks. You could have a mixture of bottom-up and top-down approaches as well. Ways to stimulate and grow interdisciplinary research, as I mentioned before, anything that will support collaboration and good leadership and facilitate interaction between disciplines will help to stimulate and grow interdisciplinary research. So that includes networking, recruitment in specific disciplines to help create those interdisciplinary teams, training researchers in interdisciplinary methodologies and skills. Also, you can do seed funding or priming to establish new interdisciplinary teams, or indeed secure external funding to support either new interdisciplinary teams or kind of help grow the interdisciplinary teams that have been built through either seed funding or priming projects. It is very important to create a supportive environment, a supportive infrastructure through either institutional support as well as messaging in institutions that interdisciplinary research is valued, and any kind of approaches that will help people with different disciplinary backgrounds come together and that cut across usual institutional structures. For example, disciplinary departments help. And then finally, just to summarize what works and things that should be considered. So as I mentioned, both top-down and bottom-up approaches work, but to be successful in the long run, you want top-down approaches to be supported by buy-in from the ground level, from the researchers themselves, and then vice versa, that, if there's something coming up from the ground up, then the support top-down is very useful. Previous experience of collaborating helps, makes for a smoother and more productive interdisciplinary research experience. As I mentioned before, a collaborative and supportive research environment is very, very important in terms of both leadership and messaging and creating an interdisciplinary culture. And finally, just to end that, often it's difficult to indicate the true value of interdisciplinary research, and as the ref has shown, impact case studies are a very, very good way to showcase successful interdisciplinary research and its impact. Thanks a lot, and I'll end there.
Thanks very much, Anushka. Yeah, really interesting stuff. And if you have questions that you'd like Anushka to answer, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll come to them all at the end, because we'll have a nice sort of amount of time for a Q&A. So thank you very much, and we'll move over to Julian. So Julian is an associate professor at Roskilde University and a partner at McKinsey & Company. He's motivated by identifying pathways towards sustainability, with a particular interest in the concept of the circular economy as a means to achieve sustainability. His research has focused on fundamental aspects of CE, including the definition and its emergence as a research field, which we're going to hear about today. He's also explored circular startups and the capabilities necessary to drive the implementation of circular economy business models, and has an active interest in public policy as enablers of circular economy strategies. So over to you, Julian. Hopefully. Is it me that's frozen, or is it Julian that's frozen? Can Imogen hear me?
Yeah, I think
I was frozen for a second. I'm back. I'm back. Yeah, I'm back.
Over to you, Julian. Thank you.
Yeah, super. Thank you so much, Ryan, for the introduction and also the kind invitation. I will keep the camera on for the beginning, but my internet seems to be a bit shaky, so let's see if we can manage the entire 10 minutes with camera. Yeah, I'll talk about a recent paper of mine that looks into circular economy as a scholarly field. And this short talk I've structured in 3 sections. The first section is really about how circular economy has emerged as a field, has moved from an idea to really a research field, and why that matters. The second chunk of the talk will outline 4 things I think are very special about the field, that I really like about the field. And this is also where I'll pick up upon the term of interdisciplinarity that Anushka has also talked about now. And then the third and last section of this brief talk will be basically 4 wishes I have for this field for the year of 2024. Just to check, because some people here seem frozen, you guys can still hear me, is that correct?
Yep, we can still hear you.
Sounds good. Okay, because yeah, Friedemann Schaber here is also frozen, so I was shortly concerned. Very good. Circular economy as a research field. Typically, if you look into the academic literature around fields, disciplines, and ideas, there's 4 criteria being put forward for what constitutes a research field. The first one is really that you have a set of foundational shared beliefs and concepts. The second is that you have a set of practical resources people are accessing regarding this idea. The third is that you have so-called authoritative structures. And then the last one is that you have an alliance of stakeholders, networks, that have also emerged around this idea. Now, if we go through these 4 criteria for circular economy as an idea, I think it's quite obvious that circular economy as an idea has really also passed this threshold of becoming a scholarly field. Let's start with foundational beliefs and concepts. I like to think of circular economy. Some of you maybe know my 2017 140 Initials paper around the elements of what, why, and who. And if we look into this, I think you could fairly argue that when it comes to what, most people would agree that circular economy is around the R principles, right? So reduce, reuse, recover. And some say it's 9 R's, some say it's 7 R's, some say it's 4 R's. But fundamentally, I think almost everyone will agree circular economy is around these kind of like these R principles. If we look into the why, I think there's also an emerging consensus that circular economy is there in order to achieve sustainability. Some scholars now even put forward the term sustainable circular economy. And obviously, again, there's some discussions here in terms of like when we talk about economic growth, for instance, to what extent we really want growth or maybe even degrowth or a-growth. But I'd argue this is nuance. And overall, most people in the field actually agree sustainability is what is the aim of circular economy. And then last but not least, if we could look into the who, I think also here a consensus has emerged that circular economy is about bringing together an alliance of stakeholders, for sure academics, but also businesses, policymakers, NGOs, and that you need all of these groups in order to make the circular economy reality. Again, I acknowledge that there's maybe nuances and still debates going on in some of these what, why, and who elements, but overall, I'd say that there's basically a foundation that there's a foundation that everyone agrees on. I'm getting a few comments in terms of slides. Indeed, there's no slides. I'm just presenting orally and no slides for this presentation. So this one was about the first section, foundation beliefs and concepts. Second, when we look into practical resources around the circular economy, there have also emerged probably hundreds of books and handbooks around how to bring the circular economy about. In the paper, and I'll put the link in the chat in a minute, we also list many of them. I personally could not pinpoint to the 1, 2, or 3 most famous practical handbooks on circular economy, but certainly if we just say the criteria is there is a lot of practical resources, I think check for sure this is fulfilled. Third, if we look into authoritative structures around the circular economy, I think there's also a lot of movement here. If we look into sustainability journals, we see that some have actually moved towards circular economy. One example being the Journal of Industrial Ecology. It used to be all around industrial ecology. Now it's actually rebranded and says it's around industrial ecology and circular economy. And we also see that new journals have emerged specifically on circular economy. For instance, Circular Economy and Sustainability, a journal published by Springer, or also the Journal of Circular Economy, which was actually published outside of the main publishers. So again, here authoritative structures have emerged. And then last but not least, the fourth criteria for a field is that network structures have also emerged around the idea. And here again, I think there's many examples. Maybe the most famous one is the International Society for Circular Economy that was launched 2 years ago, that brings together more than 1,000 actors, both from academia and practice, but also in almost every country, many specific networks around circular economy have emerged. So in sum, I think it's fair to say that circular economy has emerged from being just a vague idea to really a scholarly field that has a significant degree of institutionalization. And now you could say, well, this seems very academic. Why do we need to care if circular economy is a scholarly field or not? I'd actually say it does matter quite a bit for a scholar. Let's assume, for instance, you're a scholar in the field of sociology. And if you then want to research circular economy, you'll always do it from the perspective of sociology. So you'll think about, okay, what can circular economy be as an application case so I can fill a gap in the literature and the discipline around sociology. If you actually now say circular economy is a field and you maybe situate yourself in this field as a scholar, suddenly your perspective becomes a lot more integrated, a lot more interdisciplinary, and you can start thinking about, okay, how can I actually start closing research gaps specifically around the topic of circular economy? Now, so much on the topic of circular economy as a field, and maybe Ryan, you also want to put in the link to the paper for people to look up on. Now, moving to the second part of the talk, 4 points where I think this makes circular economy as a scholarly field really a very special and exciting field. And the first one is a very short point. To me, what I really like about the field is that I feel there's a high level of energy and also passion in the field. In a sense, you could say, I'd say many scholars are almost also activists. They really believe in the topic of circular economy. And I actually think that's a good thing, because I think this energy is a great foundation to also get started with research. Second, what I think is very special around this field of circular economy is that it's one of the few research fields out there that is truly, truly interdisciplinary, right? And I define interdisciplinary maybe slightly different to what Anushka has just put out. I define it as bringing together people from different disciplines. I'm originally a human geographer. I work together with engineers, I work with chemists, I work with historians, I work with business administration people, all together on papers on circular economy. I think this is very magic, because obviously everyone brings their own set of ideas, and I feel it's very healthy, and it creates a lot of new ideas if you challenge each other and try to write a paper together. So I think that's a second great thing about the field of circular economy. A third great thing to me is that this field is also really one of the few fields that are truly transdisciplinary. And I define transdisciplinary as bringing together people from academia and practice. And I think at least there's a bunch of examples of people who actually contribute to the academic literature, Michael Lieder, for instance, Marty Geisdorfer, but who at the same time actually work in the private sector, right? And I think, again, this creates a lot of new ideas, because these people bring a lot of new perspectives. And I think it's very healthy for the development of the field, and also for the usefulness of the researchers, of the results of the research for practitioners. And then last but not least, the fourth point that I think is special around this field is that it actually has significant funding. You'll realize that when you look for just kind of like grants that are available, but indeed, both on the European level, but also in a lot of European countries, significant funding has been made available. Also, companies are oftentimes very keen to fund this. So I think this is also in the field of sustainability, specifically when you look at the social science part, quite special that you have so much funding. And obviously, sometimes you just need a research assistant and maybe a postdoc to do a good paper, but it can also help, I think, to put your research to the next level if there's a lot of funding. So these are four things that I think are great about the newly emerged field of circular economy. And now I'll close with really 4 wishes I have to the field for the year of 2024. You could also say 4 criticisms regarding the field that I now frame in kind of like more positive, in a more positive sense. My first wish really is that I hope that we as scholars in the field, we reduce the amount of scholarly review articles we put out, and we go more into really empirical research. I've really reviewed as a reviewer a lot of review articles last year. Sometimes I felt I was reviewing articles that were just summarizing a lot of other existing reviews. I think probably the most reviews we have in the subfield around circular business models, and for sure reviews can be helpful, but I don't think we need in 1 year something like 8 to 10 reviews on the same topic. As a scholar, I see how it's sometimes attractive to write a review. I myself obviously have also done it. They always get a lot of citations, but I feel if we want to move the field, it's important to also double down on more empirical research. My second wish to the field is that we double down in empirical research that really goes deep, deep, deep into specific sectors. Now, when I work on circular economy as a practitioner, what I realize again and again is that circular economy is an extremely different animal from sector to sector. At Utrecht University, where I also am affiliated, we've just launched a topic on circular economy in hospitals. There's really no research around circular economy in hospitals right now. And what we realized is that basically everything we know around circular economy in textiles, in automotive, it really doesn't apply for hospitals, right? And I think this shows that if you want to do research that's application oriented, that can also help practitioners, it's really important to pick these kind of like niche, to pick these subsectors and go very, very deep. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Third, I hope that the literature becomes more theoretical. And I saw one of the questions being, is circular economy theory? I'd actually say it's not a theory as of today. It's probably more of an umbrella concept that touches upon different theories. But if you look into a lot of the literature, I actually feel a lot of the literature is very descriptive, right? Just to give one example again, there's probably 300 to 400 papers out there now that are around circular economy barriers. Oftentimes, they're just long lists of different barriers, which I think were helpful 5 years ago, but I'd say now with the maturity of the field, we need to move on and we need to go from this description to mechanisms, right? So to really explain how does A lead to B, and that to me then also means we need to kind of like delve a bit deeper into theory to deepen our understanding of circular economy as an idea. That's my third wish for the field. And then last but not least, to close also my presentation, I wish that all of us in the field remain so excited about the topic and continue publishing a lot in the different journals out there, also the specific journals that are now out there, such as Circular Economy and Sustainability, Journal of Circular Economy. I also put this in the chat because I do think that this conversation that is so active always leads to new insights and always progresses circular economy. Some people in practice, they now say that there's a so-called circular economy paradox. And what they mean with the circular economy paradox is that we put out something like 5,000 papers per year on circular economy, but we see very little movement in practice. To me, that is actually too negative. I think there is movement in practice, and I think more research, more applied research in this very special field of circular economy will also make a contribution to more circular economy practice. Yeah, and let me stop here. I hope this was roughly 10 minutes, Ryan, and I hope I didn't freeze throughout the presentation without realizing it. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts.
Thanks, Julian. Yep, no, you were perfectly audible the whole way through, and yeah, pretty much bang on 10 minutes. So thank you very much for that. And again to Anushka. I don't know if we've got some more questions. I think Julian picked on one of the questions that was sort of posed for him in the talk. And just to mention, some of my CE Hub colleagues who are on the call have been working on research into circular economy and medical technology, which will be sort of some results of which coming soon that you might be interested in. So yes, if there's no questions immediately, I'll ask a question to kick things off, and it's to both of you, but I guess sort of sparked from Anushka's talk. But you both mentioned funding, and you both mentioned sort of publishing and things like that in terms of academia, and there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between publishers wanting interdisciplinary work and then top journals. And Julian sort of emphasised the point there about perhaps going to circular economy specific journals at the end. Yeah, Anushka, I wonder if in your sort of research from sort of back in 2016 on interdisciplinarity, you came across that weird paradox, and had any further insights on it?
Yes, so I think things are a lot better for two reasons. One is journals like the Journal of Circular Economy, so interdisciplinary journals are being created. And the second reason is in terms of valuing research, journal publications, and especially impact factor of a publication, citation factors of publication, are not the be all and end all. So other types of impact of research, for example, societal impact, are also valued. So which means that if you want to go down the route of doing more applied research, or research that is going to perhaps create economic value or help improve the lives of people within society, then that's valued as well. So I think things are moving for those two reasons. But there is still a problem, especially kind of like what Julian was mentioning about the point about he sees interdisciplinarity where people from different disciplines are coming together. What that means is that often people are are still trained in single disciplines, and bringing that together in an interdisciplinary way, and that kind of thought process when peer review of either project proposals or publications is happening, there are issues with kind of novelty. Is this novel enough? Of course, it's novel because it's a new problem, but it might not be novel for individual disciplines. So those kinds of issues are still there.
Thanks, Anushka. Julian, I think you're still there, but gone off camera. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think Anushka raises a few excellent points, right? And indeed, as I also note in this paper around circular economy as a field, it still remains a bit of a risky career choice for an early career scholar to go not into a traditional discipline, but more of into a interdisciplinary field, right? Because I mean, the largest chunk of academia, they're still organized according to disciplines. Most of the jobs are still jobs that are given out by departments that are basically, the operationalization of a discipline. So it is certainly something to consider as an early career scholar, how you position yourself. If you say you are someone in the field, in the discipline of business administration, interested in circular economy, versus you are a circular economy scholar that also uses business administration methodology. If you really want to stick around in academia, my recommendation would be that at least early on in your career, secure a job by positioning yourself as someone who's in a discipline, interested in circular economy, and then once you've secured tenure, you can do a bit whatever the heck you want, right? But I think that's kind of like the pragmatic piece of advice I'd give here, given how academia up until today remains to be organized.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have a hand up, which is wonderful. Mayank, did you want to come on the microphone?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I have a question on, since I was very happy to see your paper that you're seeing that CE as a research field. Thank you for that. Do you still think that CE is a theory, or it will take time to reach at that level? Because when we say interdisciplinary, that's the challenge. What is the theory? So is there something called as interdisciplinary theory, or something which cut across the disciplines and present as a theory? What are your thoughts on that? And second, when you say that there are many papers which are coming on literature review and barriers and challenges, and then you say that circular economy is a different beast in every sector. So have we reached that sectorial limits in terms of where circular economy can contribute? Or you think that still the barriers and challenges with respect to a new field or a new sector can be beneficial?
Yeah, I think fantastic question, right? And my view is that as of today, circular economy is not a theory, right? It's an idea, it's an umbrella concept. It's in some senses certainly still also a bit of a fuzzy notion where there is a foundation, but above there's still a lot of fuzziness. It's not yet a fully developed theory, right? And I think that is something, though, that is missing if circular economy wants to take the next S-curve and also wants to integrate a lot of the knowledge that's currently out there, right? I think that's really the next S-curve to deepen our understanding regarding circular economy. And I think that's something where I'm always very excited when I see scholars trying to build a theory on circular economy. Some colleagues of mine have tried that. I've also been allowed to contribute. You may have seen it. We did a special issue around the concept of circular disruption.
Just as he was saying the word disruption, yes, there was a special issue around the concept of circular disruption, which was sort of inviting more theoretical development, I suppose, of circular economy, or aligned with certain theoretical ideas from, entrepreneurship scholarship. Julian's back. He can say it himself.
I'm back. As good as I think I cut out. I hope you heard me still with a circular disruption piece. So colleagues and I, we did a special issue, I think 2 years back. We tried to develop a circular economy theory around how do you get from a linear economy to a circular economy very fast, right? And we tried to basically develop a process theory that described this from linear to circular. It's one attempt, certainly not the final theory, but I think these kind of works are very important now to deepen really also the level of insight that comes from the circular economy literature.
Brilliant, thanks, Julia.
If I just might make a quick point. So it is one of the reasons that people are interested in interdisciplinary research is there is this idea that new research fields and disciplines will emerge at the boundaries of disciplines, things such as biochemistry or kind of other kinds of data science and artificial intelligence type things are some of these that have emerged. And you can imagine that with all this activity in circular economy, it will eventually emerge as a separate sub-discipline.
Yeah, thanks, Anushka. I've got 2 comments in the chat that I'll sort of merge together to both of you, and then we have 2 more hands up, which I'll turn to them. We've only got 10 minutes, so perhaps some snappy responses and snappy questions as well would be great. So from Sue Harris and James McLean. So from Sue, Julian, I read your paper, Circular Economy, a New Research Field last year. It's one of the things that motivated me to move into academia from industry. So you're responsible for that. What do you think, and seeing as you both work across sort of universities, but also in consulting roles, what do you think are some of the factors that help research get applied to industry that researchers should consider? And then from James McLean, how do those working in government who don't necessarily want to sort of work in academia per se get involved in research as well? So it'd be great to hear from both of you. Perhaps Anushka first.
Maybe the second one, in terms of government or industry, it's basically reach out to people who might have interesting ideas and collaborate. Funding will still be a problem, but I think ideas and kind of enthusiasm and passion go a long way. So that's one thing. And the other bit, the first question. Yes, that help get research applied and have impact in industry. I would say the key thing is it a problem that you need to align with industry problems? Is it a problem that industry is also looking at?
Thanks, Anushka. How about you, Julian?
Yeah, I think great question, Sue. First of all, very happy to read that this paper was one of the reasons that motivated you to also go more into research. I think a huge lever for academia and practice to move closer together is indeed funding, right? And what we see, for instance, in the Netherlands is that a lot of funders actually only give an academic funding if that academic can demonstrate that they also have practice partners, right? Actually, one of the very first grants I ever won was such a grant where basically I had to demonstrate that I could also team up with a city and that I could also team up with a company, and only if they also put in real money, relatively little money, I think 5 or 10K, I would get this grant from the Ministry of Education in the Netherlands. And this kind of setup is increasingly common, and I think this kind of setup really can then ensure that practice and academia works together. If you don't want to move from practice to academia, getting involved into such projects is a fantastic way to do research while still working in practice. And if you are a researcher that's very excited about applied research, getting such grants is also a guarantee you'll do applied research, right? Because if you have a city and a company sitting next to you in the research project, they will ask for applied research outputs and not just kind of like a very outputs that maybe are not immediately applicable for practice, right? So I think, again, looking into this kind of funding structures that really require bringing together practice and academia, I think that's a great thing to answer those questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Anushka. So, Khalid, would you like to come on the microphone?
Yes, thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Julian, and thank you, Anushka. Absolutely insightful presentation. My question actually to Julian. Thank you very much. I've actually, a lot of your publications have actually inspired my work. So I work with CEAP with Ryan and other colleagues, and actually one of my recent publications is sort of reflect what you said about the diversity of circular economy implementation, especially when it comes to different sectors. So I looked into that, and I sort of proposed a typology, sort of like looking into circular economy implementation from the perspective of the level where you actually want to implement those circular economy principles. So my question is essentially with regards to sort of the strategies to adopt in order, because you talked about circular economy not yet becoming a theory, but then in light of the sort of the differences, sort of the significant differences that exist between sort of in the implementation in different sectors, Do you think that there is a call for sort of a unified approach, a unified yet adaptable approach that can be devised, maybe drawing from existing theories that we know, interdisciplinary theories that we know that actually have worked in different disciplines? Do you think that there is the need to actually bring all of these different things together into one adaptable sort of unified approach that all the different sectors can use to adopt or implement circular economy? I know this is a very convoluted question, but yeah. So, do you think that there's a need or there's a call for that sort of thing, unified theory, unified approach for acceleration? Thank you.
Yeah, I love the question. Right? And I think there's a bit of a history in many disciplines. Physics probably most famous, right? Of trying to find the theory for everything. Obviously, also in circular economy, right? As we all said, there's a need for further theoretical development, and for sure, this theoretical development should not ignore all of the theoretical work that has already taken place, much of which, specifically in sustainability, is very relevant, right? So I think we should look into the theories that are out there. One theory that I think could be specifically relevant is sustainability transitions theory that has been worked on a lot for the past 10, 15 years, where I think we can take a lot for also circular economy. And then we should amend that to the specificities and to the needs of circular economy as a concept and as an idea.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting, thanks. And thanks, Khaled, for the question. So we have a final hands up from Alex. So please, Alex.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for your presentation. Julian, you mentioned the kind of growth, degrowth sticking point, and sort of said that you consider it a nuance. I sort of did my university research in circular economy and still kind of work in the field now, and something that does continue to sort of stick with me as a bit of a problem here is that I feel like, especially in the context of kind of developed Western countries, the circular economy concept has become a pretty nice, flashy way for companies to, you know, stick a nice circularity strategy at the start of their business model, and essentially, you know, maybe incorporate, you know, a little bit of recycled material or some kind of end of life strategy into their products, but ultimately, you know, not actually reduce production, not actually reduce raw material consumption. So I'm just kind of interested in your take on like how this theory, which I think is still emerging and still has a lot of potential to be very beneficial for our efforts towards a more sustainable, you know, global economy, how best we might approach preventing that kind of co-option by companies and you know, organizations who essentially just want to use the sort of, you know, corporate language to do this basically business as usual under a sort of greenwashed veneer.
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with you that there has been quite a bit of greenwashing in the past when it comes to circular economy and its application in the business world, right? I think that's for sure the case. However, my view.
We may never know. Hopefully we'll come back in a second. Yeah, I suppose it's a perennial problem, I suppose, of sustainability.
Back. I'm back. Let's I'll give it another shot. So very quickly, hoping that I'm not cutting out again. So I agree, there's been a lot of greenwashing when it comes to circular economy. However, my view is that in the past 2-3 years, there's an increasing number of companies that are actually serious about rewiring their company towards circularity, right? And this is something you see when you look into how they set up their logistics, right? How they really move towards circular value chains, how they think about recycling as a kind of like core, recycled products as a core ingredient to the inputs. I see a lot of movement. And in my mind, or in my opinion, a lot of that movement is actually driven by regulatory pressures, right? I mean, we've all followed the discussions around ESG, but there's now obviously also more legislation upcoming towards more regional and more resilient value chains, which all drives circularity, circular economy in companies. And I continue to see the policymakers in a pole position to drive circular economy and to also ensure that for businesses, it's not just greenwashing, but it's really a rewiring of how they have set up their business models.
Yes, thank you. It's very interesting. I think that yeah, the thing that just always occurs to me is that the circular economy at its core is based on extracting value from waste materials, and so kind of this, designing out waste is not actually really the fundamental goal here. Like if the economic value is going to come from recycling and from waste materials, then in some ways the circular economy seems to incentivize disposable products made from recyclable materials, and that sort of seems to run up in contradiction against a lot of the stuff that I understand about materials and using less and reducing our reliance on raw material extraction. So yeah, it's very interesting. I won't ask you to try and answer that now, but yeah.
Because I maybe just, if I may, Ryan, maybe just 30 seconds. Obviously, this is a very big topic you're opening up now, and we can't do justice to it in the last 120 seconds of this webinar. But my sense is a bit right to counter what you've said, that many academics and practitioners actually take this waste hierarchy, reduce, recycle, very seriously. And they actually say the first step of going circular is actually reducing consumption, right? And also within businesses, I mean, if you look, for instance, into shared business models, sharing economy business models, those are fundamentally business models that result in reduction in resource consumption. So I'd say I would not say, or I'd actually argue that it's a bit of a misunderstanding sometimes to say circular economy is just about the recirculation of waste. I'd say the concept is broader, and I think it's also about actually thinking through how can you achieve sufficiency and how can you achieve also reduction in research consumption, right? But that may be just as a super quick answer, and I'll put one more link in the chat, which is around the paper where we actually thought about how circular economy and sharing economy interrelate. And for sharing economy, obviously, this notion of resource consumption is also a big one. So maybe have a look also into that paper, and happy to continue that conversation with you at another point.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julian. Cheers.
Thanks. We do have one more question. We can't really go into this detail now, but there's also an interesting thing that both of you, I'm sure, would have something to say, working in sort of consultancy, is how management concepts diffuse into practice and how practitioner sort of methodologies enter into academia. Do you both have sort of 1 minute 30 more to take this last question? Brilliant. So James, if you'd like to ask, and try to make it concise as possible, and we'll have concise answers, because everybody will be starting to drop off the call now. But I'd just like to say thanks to everybody that did come along as well.
It's a really quick one, I guess, but probably is a longer answer. When you look at like circular systems and circular economies within nature as like a bio-inspired source for how we would design these systems, there's often an issue that I've noticed and has come up again and again of redundancy. So the most resilient and stable systems often have many forms of supply chains or many forms of energy extraction or material extraction, and we see that animals or biosystems that only have one path are very vulnerable. How do we address that in terms of being conservative with our production? Or how have you found companies get around that, potentially sharing economies and other things, but that sort of redundancy problem that increases resilience but also increases material consumption?
I think it was a question aimed primarily at Julian for circular economy sort of expertise, who has frozen again. So I think let's leave it there. James, it's a big, a really important and large question. So perhaps take up the offer of connecting with Julian on LinkedIn, sending them the message. I'm sure Anusha's got lots to say about how grand challenge ideas are implemented in businesses as well. But perhaps we don't have the time to sort of really delve into that. So I suggest that we call it an end here to the webinar. Thanks for everybody that came and are still here. Thanks to Anushka, thanks to Julian for a really interesting discussion. I think, let's carry on the conversation on LinkedIn and other social platforms. And if you could please fill out the feedback form would be very much appreciated. We hold a lunchtime webinar every month, so there'll be another one coming up soon, which will be announced shortly if it's not already on the Eventbrite pages. And we hope to see you there. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Bye.
Yeah, no worries, Anushka. Thanks very much.